Ladies and Germans, how you all doing? This is Con Ulrich.
This is Ringroo. Hello, hello, hello.
And folks, we had a bit of a time off here, but we're back with Orsha North. Rang, who do we have, sir?
Left-hand side in the blue, we have Tonnoman playing Panzer Lehr Maverick income. Right-hand side in the red, we have Koenig playing 3rd American Armored with a Vanguard income.
Yes, folks, I had that same moment of confusion myself. ERBC is the colonel named Koenig. Now, you and I were talking before the beginning of this. Panzer Lehr, 3rd Armored. You said Armored Brawl. I completely agree. But I'm wondering if we're going to see something a little bit more unique about this. Usually Panzer Lehr is kind of crushed in terms of infantry because of that overabundance of armor. But 3rd Armored doesn't really get a whole lot of infantry themselves. I'm quite fascinated to see how the numbers kind of stack up in the long run.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see if someone actually decides to do a central push, which actually is kind of going on right now. Flam and Worth is harassing the southern town, Puma providing fire support, and really both sides, opting for a lot of light vehicles, APs, half tracks, all that good stuff. We're not seeing any real heavy tank deployment.
Yeah, that's true. That is certainly true. Now, you were saying, you kind of said, we're not really have APCs, which kind of brings up an interesting idea about the half track itself. I can certainly kind of see the fact that it's not the most armored of personal carriers, but I think the important part behind an APC is it has some firepower behind it, and we are seeing that up north of the M3A1, really just kind of rolling aside everything that was Panzer Lehr. Now we have a single P3 Führer up here, who's going to be, well, furious after that armored rifle kind of comes in with the Zook.
Yeah, it's a real nice thing. We're honestly both divisions actually having bazookas and panzer strikes with your baseline infantry. Gives you some pretty good firepower in these sorts of forest fights to make tanks go away quickly. Or you can just shoot them in the face with a 37mm cannon. That works as well.
And if you see right now, we are going to see a Puma being brought up to the northern side. Almost called it a Warthog for a second, but you know what? That's a different franchise. Kind of fascinating to see what he expects to do with a single recon unit, which I suppose is why he's being Shrimp Pioneers and P-Shrek, P-Kren. But I don't know. I think the North has lost a Tonnoman. I think Koenig has the flanks rather securely.
Yeah, it's a very effective push here from Koenig in general, and he can pretty easily just hold that hill for Tonnoman. More so just damage control, making sure the North doesn't fall any further. Yeah, he's still got the southern push, has lost a bit of momentum. He still has a foothold in that southern town, but he needs some extra reinforcements. But at the same time, he's dealing with the far south because Koenig got a pretty good force here.
Which makes it so odd that Tonnoman over here is actually up 14-10. And I think this is kind of the kind of curious thing here is that we look at the territory right now, and to me, if I'm looking at the map, I'm thinking, hey, cool, this is Koenig's. But at the same time, it's, soon the Tonnoman's going to come. He's going to bring some Shreks and tanks and some, and, it's going to get really, really dicey really, really quick.
Mm-hmm.
But not to be outdone, one of the lone aircraft, in fact, the only scout aircraft by the 3rd Armored is coming over the front line. And I have to say, it's kind of funny to me to see both such heavy on-the-ground divisions have such puny air tabs in both cases.
Yeah, even artillery as well. They've actually built their decks quite similar in a way. It's mainly just as much infantry and tanks, and as well as the amount of fire support one can bring here. We're seeing up north, things are getting a bit heated once again. As Tonnoman isn't just doing damage control, but is trying to push actively back into that hilltop position. But Koenig just has a very good defense here. And it's very dangerous for him to keep moving these tanks so close, because bazookas are everywhere, man.
That's true, and let's not forget, these lovely little M8s are ridiculously deadly. Even against those P3s. P3s are rather under-armored at this particular point. You can see right now, there's actually the second or third P3 that's been taken out by those M8 scout cars.
Mm-hmm. And we got little remnants of this push. The Puma and Half Track are providing good fire support. But it's not really enough to make a push, happen or continue. And those M8s could just swing around up north and get a kill. But no, they're actually just going to camp the road. And because we're just seeing continual, light vehicle spam, no real, medium tanks, these M8s are going to have a field day.
Yes, they are. Which is kind of weird to think that he's bringing the Flampanzers. to me, that would have been a moment to, well, bring in a P4. Not for nothing, but the P4, even if you only have 3 of them in this first phase, you gotta be investing some heavy firepower, something to base your both resistance and your reversal around. And he's just not doing that.
Yeah, both sides really playing it quite light armored, because, in 1v1 you want to try to cover as much ground as possible here, but definitely a good idea for Tonnoman to actually up armor. You see, he got the Focke-Wulf to try to do some recon, but he's not the reconist recon helicopter plane. It'll be a couple of years before helicopters become a bit mainstream. Trying to spot those M8s.
Well, the M8s right now, the only thing they have to fear is a Shrek itself. One of them's already gone down. In fact, that's the commander as well, so at least the P-Ground knows who to shoot at first. And this Puma he's quite nervous, but he's given enough breathing room over here that the M8 is forced to withdraw. And at long last, some of these half-tracks can limp to the front lines without fear being set alight like Zippos.
Yeah, the aggressive maneuver from the M8 definitely screwed over Koenig, because he probably could have knocked out this entire force if he just stayed in that defensive position. But now he's out of position. There's still a decent amount of infantry in the rear he can just fall back on, so it's not terrible.
Oh, absolutely. We are going to see some of that minimal on-map artillery. 81mm half-track over here for the Americans is trying to put fire down on the Sturm Pioneers and really that central flag. One of the things that's kind of surprising me is if you look to the west of that Sturm Pioneer, that P-Gren, we have that Grill and we have that Martyr, which have both been sitting there pretty much since the word go. And all I can think here is that he was afraid there was going to be some weird Stuart push, but I feel like right now he knows that's no longer the case. It's time to move those things along some axis somewhere, no pun intended.
I guess it's more for just zoning, because he can't really contend with anything on the hill, but he just has enough range for anything coming down the hill. You can start shooting them as they do make an aggressive maneuvers.
But here's an option. Martyr, move it northeast. See the MG42 that's right there? If you plop that in the southeast corner of that forest, you see everything. Where he is right now? Sure, but he's getting blocked out by this entire central 2-flag position. And right now we're going to see there's a half-track moving in a blind spot defilade, another armored rifle being moved in at the same time. There's a bit of a weakness here.
But it's also definitely a weakness just in Tonnoman's line, because as I make Greyhound, may got pushed out of position, but he's actually taken full advantage of it, getting infantry into the northern town, and he's just doing hit-and-run tactics in and out the forest just to try to cause some havoc on Tonnoman's lines. And actually doing a great job of stalling this northern push.
And that's the thing, too, isn't it? Is that right now, Koenig has to take out as many points as he can because Panzer Lehr, true to form, is being made over here for B. There are tons of Panthers on the way, tons of P4s on the way. Heck, Jagdpanzers galore could be here. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, why wasn't a Jagdpanzer one of these earlier kind of call-ins? Yes, expensive, for sure, but I feel like we're definitely missing the boat here on something.
Yeah, Jagdpanzer in the middle will just do a heck of a lot of damage.
Now, we are seeing Tonnoman down south kind of having this little containment going on here, which makes me think that he's going to try to rupture the center again. It won't be easy or pretty, but I think he's got the opportunity to. It's just a question of how much it's going to cost him.
I'm also just surprised, far south, Koenig hasn't moved out of his defensive position here on the hill. He has a whole lot of troops, and he could possibly make the play to go to the other end of the forest and capture it. But we just see both sides have decent defensive positions surrounding each other. No one wants to make the first move yet, probably because they're a bit more focused on what's going on up north.
Yeah, I kind of feel like we have one of those civilization moments where it's like, I'm not attacking you, but you have 3 corps worth of troops on the borders within, the neighbor. Yeah.
They're doing maneuvers, Khan.
Exactly. I'm not on your side. I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. Yeah, I've seen those maneuvers. I pulled a couple of them myself because I'm, I got an older Khan and a younger Khan I had to grow up with. We are 10 seconds away, though, from Phase B, and we're seeing another call into the north, even as I'm kind of surprised we're only seeing Stewards. Where the heck are the heavier tanks?
Yeah, it's just honestly quite funny seeing such light armored play. I mean, yeah, he has like M4 Shermans, a few of them in A phase, but there has not been a reason for him to having to upgun to deal with any other like armored threats. So you might as well just go for the cheap fly support tanks because those still have a lot of machine guns.
I do want to note real quick that, shockingly enough, the Flampanzer in the Northern Forest is almost out of flames, which is something that I cannot say I've seen too often.
It's so weird seeing the flame ammunition icon. I
Yeah.
swear to God, that might have been the first time I've ever seen it.
I legitimately clicked on it to be like, wait a second, is he actually low on flame? And he is.
Yeah. Or maybe he's on fire.
Oh no, you know who is on fire? That M10, who's just absolutely roasting that incoming reinforcement troops. Took out a Puma, took out a half-track. He's putting fire down on these scout cars and infantry, and this is not something you can deal with very easily.
Yeah, the line of sight he has in that road is beautiful. Like, that is a very tight angle.
I'm trying to think right now. This technically he doesn't have it, but that's just because the weird way that line of sight shows up if you actually show it. But yeah, it's really, really tight. You're absolutely correct there. We are seeing a verbal Vind on the map, which I think is something that is an interesting call-in. I don't think it's being used for anti-air necessarily.
Yeah, where is he deploying it? Okay, it's kind of deploying it a little bit by the town. Maybe he's just going to use that for fire support, because it's not really much aircraft to shoot down. I mean, you can ward off the recon planes a bit, but it might just be better to get a Fokker Wolf to try to deal with it. The Fokker Wolf is the MOTI road run.
This is certainly true. Now, down south, we did see there was a little bit of aggression. You can see how well it's going by how much it's starting to bleed. And actually, if you really want to see how it's going, if you zoom in on all those burning wrecks on the crest of the hill, you see that most of them actually have the Wehrmacht cross on it.
Oh, so you tried to make a play and it didn't play out.
No, it did not. Kind of funny, we actually had that 57 mil anti-tank gun to the eastern side of that position down south. Kind of not so much an unsung hero, but certainly one of those kind of silent but deadly moments that really is putting a lot of pressure now on Tonnoman in the south. I wouldn't be surprised to see some desperate call-ins here.
Yeah, Koenig's done a very good job of securing both the northern and southern borders of this map, which is, standard Orsha North play. You want to be king of the hill. It's kind of the same Tonnoman's lost some momentum in that initial southern town push, because he was doing pretty good, and really, for both divisions, playing more in the center works well for both of them. And it'd be good for, especially Tonnoman's case, to try to make another big push right through the center.
Well, I think that was the thing for me that kind of bothered me so much about that martyr positioning, is that we didn't really see anything to warrant it, but just because you don't see something that warrants the call-in doesn't mean you don't need to be, fearing what you can't see right now. I don't know. It's a complex moment, but suffice to say, I don't 100% really agree with the positioning still. Down south, the last blue troop goes down, even as Storm Pioneers and a couple scout cars move on in.
Yeah, it's Koenig's is in a very good position. He still hasn't fully secured it because Tonnoman is coming in with some Stern Pioneers to get himself a small foothold back in there. And there are good CQC troops compared to what the Americans have. But just numbers alone, I don't think are going to be clearing out that position.
Yeah, what I actually would like to see is if somebody could stick one of those stewards in that forest. Yeah, you don't get a ton of range on them, but if you put it right where those armored rifles are, the BARs, the forest clears out just enough that he's going to aggress into you, and at that point, your troops are going to absolutely wreck him.
Yeah.
Almost the same way that peak run just shreked that M8 on the northern side of the southern forest.
Yeah, again, absolutely blown up here from the 81 mil.
Yes, it is. In the meantime, though, 1410, we aren't to phase B, about 40% through that. And Koenig, I think, I don't want to say and get, casters curse him, but he's got a lot of opportunities here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's managed to play very good in the flanks, and he's got a nice 14-10. I mean, right now, his B phase sort of sucks for him, but if he can just survive till C phase, it's going to be even Stevens, and it's just holding out. Just don't fail at that point.
Well, he's got a 15-9 now because he controls the absolute entirety of the northern side. And given with that on the southern side, which now the command M8 is in there, but he has only returned fire on. Interesting. Okay, there we go. All right. I don't know, Shrimp Pioneers are coming in. Like you said, I don't see this being the super successful push that he's hoping for it to be.
Yeah.
Even with the naval in the background here, I don't think it's going to go well.
Yeah, once again, he needs to push more on the center, not trying to get into these American infantry grind fights. Because the American infantry, pretty damn good. Big scrod, may not be super CQC specialists. But everybody has a semi-automatic rifle, it goes quite far.
This is very true. You can see right now the Sturm Pioneers falling back, and they don't really have anywhere to fall back to. So yeah, I don't want to say things look dire right now, but the Panzer Lehr is looking a little bit Panzer lit.
Yeah. Yeah, and they do, like, he's been trading pretty bad in a lot of infantry fights here, but he does have a decent amount of armored units on the field. Like, up north, he's got the Jagdpanzer being brought in the center. He is making a push happen with the Puma, the Grill, the Pak-40s, the Panzergrens. He has assets. He just needs to deploy them in more wide-open spaces.
Exactly. And I think that's what so much of my issue is, I think, so far with the Panzer Lehr being kind of utilized this game, is that we're not seeing their mobility being really turned to. The 3rd Armored, as much as we want to kind of go and say, like, yeah, they're being in the wide open spaces consistently, they still have a bite and hold mentality. Panzer Lehr is one of those groups that has to consistently, at least for me, stay mobile, stay active, and stay pushing throughout a given match. You can't just kind of like sit back and wait for the enemy to come to you.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, different strokes for different folks. We are going to get into the kind of not the heyday, but rather what's the other term I'm looking for here? The gloaming, let's call it, of Tonnoman. As we're going into the 17th minute of the 16-8, he's bleeding out quite heavily as the first Panther hits the field. Long overdue in my mind.
Yeah, and he's bringing out, more towards the northern central position, probably to help screen out the hill, because we do have that 105 Sherman, which is putting down some pretty good fire support. I do like how Tonnoman is making this push in the center happen. He just needs a little bit more beef to back it up here. I mean, the M5 sure is getting into position. Yeah, he just needs some more infantry to clear out town, because if he can capture like the 3 flags in the town area, yeah, can very much bring him back into the match.
Absolutely. We are seeing a rotation, by the way, the naval for. I don't know. Okay, he's moved. He's a little bit nervous about it being taken out, which I agree. There's not a whole lot between those guys and the reinforcement point. And you can see right now we have this scout car doing the whole kind of sneaky beaky behind enemy lines bit. I'm wondering if he'll move a little bit further north, and if he sees that, if he's going to be able to take that out. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we used to see, anti-tank rifle teams during rear line cheese. The matches now evolved to M8 scout cars.
Certainly for the Americans, anyway. We are also finally seeing the M10 being deployed a little bit more aggressively in the center. And you can see it right now. I feel like that center push, it's not dead, but he's certainly on life support here.
Yeah. The M10 is in a good spot. He's kind of started a bit prematurely. He needs to get his Panther up and rolling. He's got a second Panther being brought in more towards the southern end of the map. And right now, his fire support assets aren't really providing fire support to the dudes you very much need it.
Yeah, but where do you put this fire support? We're going to see right now, there was a barrage, and I couldn't tell you for the life of me where it went, which kind of tells you quite a bit there. But where do you deploy your fire support at this point? I truly don't know what can be turned around here.
You put like the Panther more towards the front line. It's risky, obviously, but you just need it drawing fire, and then you just shoot back with your big 75mm. Koenig's got the bloody 155mm heavy artillery, and he's going to be using that to pound the northern forest, and probably get some pretty good hits here.
That is certainly true. Because we are going into, I say phase C here. And we're going to see those guys walking right through the area of impact at the absolute worst time. This is like watching the Dirty Dozen, except they don't get off the hillside before the artillery comes down. Oh, man.
Not good at all.
No, not good at all. And now we are into that dog day of this for the Panzer Lehr. They're in sea phase. They're down in points. They're down in territory. They aren't down in fighting spirit, but it's certainly an uphill battle for them.
Mm-hmm. And just looking on the far flanks, the Americans, there's just such a built-up defensive network of infantry, armored cars, light tanks. Yeah, it's just going to be very difficult, especially in CQC situations, for Tonnoman to push. And once again, he's moving like 1 or 2 units kind of by himself. Like this Panzer III moving up north. Bit too aggressive, no recon, no infantry support, and you obviously get bazookaed.
I think what we're seeing over here is not a failure to communicate, but a failure to coordinate, really. Because we did see a Sturm Pioneer move up a little bit with that P3. Unfortunately, Sturm Pioneers aren't exactly known for their ability to kind of reach out and touch somebody. They're more about that very intimate kind of "come on, baby, light my fire" kind of idea instead. So,
is that a Flammenwerfer in your pants, or are you just happy to see me?
Just bring a little bit of light to your life. And we are going to see a tap out over here, which I completely understand.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And yeah, you can see right there, the tail of the tape is pretty brutal.
Mm-hmm. It's really funny seeing that match, because there was barely any like heavy or medium armored play for most of it. Like both sides were playing it as like light tank divisions at the start. And the Americans are going to win in that department. Even though the Germans do get Panzer IIIs and Pumas, the Stuarts are really cheap and cost effective. And it doesn't really matter if you have a 50 mil or 37 mil in a CQC fight against light tanks. It's just who shoots you first.
Yeah, exactly. Though I will say, theoretically, the P3 does have... yeah, you know what, never mind. I was going to say, they cost the same amount, but, yeah, that's really splitting hairs at this point. It's about kind of trying to talk up some guy who's already been brewed so much that you think he was a pot of coffee. In the meantime, people kind of call out over here the M8s, sung heroes. I think there's the 2 guys that were up north roasting and toasting half of the Panzer Lehr in this case. But heck, even some of the armored rifles getting in and getting effective, but not also to be missed out. That M10, Puma, half-track, Verbal-Wind, and another half-track.
Yeah, very effective pickoffs there. Roll for losses, it's really Mers, the Panzer Grenadier, kind of doing his best to carry the German army on his back.
And he would have been able to do that too if he hadn't left half of his squad in Russia. But at the end of it, Tonnoman had a great idea. Just that early reversal just really put him behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, he sort of played the up-armored game sooner and gone up the escalation ladder to get the Jagd Panzers and Panzer IVs, because then he could start beating up those Stuarts and M8s. And then you get into the Sherman to Panzer IV, and then you go from Panther to Jumbo. And honestly, in like the tank-on-tank fight, the Lehr does have the bit of advantage. I mean, the Jumbo is almost impossible to penetrate, but the Panther's a bit better at just blowing up everything else.
Agreed. But it sounds like we have all of our final thoughts in play. Does that sound about correct, sir?
Yes.
Well, folks, in that case then, until next time, I'm Koenig.
I'm Mangru. Take it easy.